Hi and welcome back to another episode of the Panameer Ask the Expert podcast, where you learn Oracle Cloud strategy from world's leading consultants and experts. I'm Linus, and joining me today is Scott Walls. You all probably know him as the founder of Panameer, international expert for Oracle Cloud Procurement, and having a cute dog in a lot of his LinkedIn posts. Thanks, Scott, for joining me today.
Great to be here.
So today we're going to talk about something really interesting. Subconsultant processing in Oracle Cloud. I don't know a lot about this, but maybe before we even start that, Scott, can you please tell me in one or two sentences, what is a subconsultant?
Sure. So it can be anybody who's a sub-consultant, but really for the specifics of this conversation, when the government goes to a firm, what's called delegated authority, and they want to do some work for the government, that firm hires a prime consultant, but that prime consultant will work with multiple other suppliers who we call sub-consultants that have different qualifications, and they're summed up so that the prime consultant can bid. So a real quick example, if you're going to make missiles, somebody makes aerodynamics, somebody makes shells, somebody makes explosives, etc. They all have specific qualifications that the prime would use to bid on making the missiles.
Okay, interesting. And I heard that a lot of clients or customers feel like they don't have this solution in Oracle Cloud, right?
Oddly, yes.
Oddly. You say oddly, but correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they have a dedicated module for subconsultant processing in Oracle Cloud, do they?
That's true. And even where we use it, it doesn't per se say subconsultant. That's true. That's a fair assessment.
Okay, so you're telling me you found a way to use Oracle Cloud to still do the subconsultant processing, but it's just not designed from Oracle to do that.
Correct. And to be fair, we also borrow from another piece of software to round out the different components that you need as part of the total solution.
Does this mean I need to buy two different pieces of software then? I already got Oracle.
No, and you need two pieces of software. I did say that. I didn't say you need to purchase them. So obviously, the people we're talking to probably have a license in cloud. This other piece of software, believe it or not, is actually free.
Oh, that sounds pretty interesting. Okay, so maybe to approach this, because I know you recently solved that exact problem of subconsultant processing for one of your clients. What are the key components that you have to do when you're talking about subconsultant processing? Is it just storing that data or having the qualifications? What is it to it?
Sure. So it's more than that. I'd say there's 6 different components involved in the subconsultant process. So the first one is supplier onboarding. The second one is to be able to solicit and manage the actual qualifications. The third is what's called a performance review. So if you want to know from the actual consultant, from the buyer who deployed that consultant or the prime, you would ask them for a performance review of how their supplier behaved. Mm-hmm. The fourth is the consulting history. So think about the performances, the quals, any expirations. The fifth is the sub-consultant training. So obviously that's a component of it. And there is regulatory training that you're going to get from standardized players, but sometimes each specific instance of Oracle Cloud will have certain training that they need to check the box. And then finally, you have, let's think of it like a marketplace, kind of like Indeed, but just specifically for sub-consultants. So if I was going to want a design bridge builder in Ohio, this is a place that I can go and find that. So those are the 6 components. 6 components, sorry.
Wow, it sounds like a lot. And you said you can't do all of them in Oracle, right? But some of them, I guess, you can do in there.
Correct. And remember, this is the whole universe of what somebody might need. Every customer doesn't need every component. It's really what you might use depending on what the requirements are.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. I really like that you give it to me in this cadence because I feel like there's a lot to it. Maybe we should just stick to that and go through it from the onboarding to what you said, the evaluation or the assessment of their, how did you call it? their performance, right? Performance
Yes,
reviews,
performance review.
and then
Yep.
till training and research. Let's go through these steps, and you can just tell me briefly, is this in Oracle, and how can you do this in Oracle, right? So I think we start with the onboarding, right?
Yes. So onboarding is delivered as part of what we call Procurement Cloud. And in Procurement Cloud, I have really I have one distinct way, or two different ways to do the same transaction, right? So that's called supplier registration. And so I can send that link to my supplier. My supplier can come through the portal infrastructure in Oracle Cloud, and they can register. And that's configurable, but it's usually somewhere around 8 train stops along the top of the page. Some instances, that last one that I referred to is an external registration, but sometimes you, for whatever reason, want your internal staff to register on behalf of the supplier in what's called internal registration. So regardless of the way that you do it, the first step, supplier onboarding, is completely covered as part of the Procurement Cloud bundle of procurement applications in Oracle Cloud.
Right. And just to add on, because people might think about how good can I customize this to fit the subconsultant structure. I do think that they have a supplier type for subconsultants actually in the registration that you can select that may come even with Oracle. And of course, I think you're not setting up a lot of information because you're not going to do business with them, right?
Correct.
With these
Correct.
suppliers.
So you're right. We would more want to set them up as a perspective, and you're probably diving down a couple levels. You have a lot of functionality. I could type them if I really wanted to get smart with it. I have the functionality within the registration process to initiate component number 2, which we'll talk about in a second. It really, because of the way that you were asking to roll through it, I probably tried to box it, but you are correct. And you can stratify, classify those suppliers so that when we're in the later stage of trying to figure out which supplier we're going to use when we make a request, we can actually search by the qualifications. I don't want to mix too much up yet, but you're 100% correct. That's what we'll call supplier onboarding, and all of that functionality is available, and it's in native cloud, and it's probably 10% at least better than what we saw in the on-prem world. But again, in Subconsultants, the existing group today, 95+% of the customers we see, state and local, DOT, DOE, DOD, these are being managed in spreadsheets today.
Which is crazy, right? I mean, let's say crazy, but if you have the software, you bought the software, you should probably use that one.
Well, I think it goes to what you said earlier, right? It doesn't say, here's where you put your subconsultant. And so you're kind of a little off the registration, and there's a little bit of a hesitance sometimes to do that.
Sure.
Until people start to see how all of this doesn't just work better, but once I'm in the same sandbox and not in Excel, I can start to really do a lot more with my reporting. And remember, big step up from on-prem to cloud, there was some GovCert functionality in something like PeopleSoft, but nothing like Qualifications.
Okay. I think that was step 2 anyways, right? So I think we approached to step 2 from the onboarding because it's kind of integrated in Oracle Cloud. So taking away your point, you can do the onboarding in Oracle Cloud, and at the same time, if you want, capture qualifications, right? So
yes,
what is the...
I would make one distinction. You have some flexibility. What's really nice is that you can capture it as part of the registration process, but you don't necessarily have to. You can also just initiate it from that process. So clients shouldn't feel like they're locked in. And more importantly, because what they'll stress out about is sending out work to suppliers who aren't suppliers, or suppliers who aren't there yet. Don't know if I've won the work yet, right? So I want to be really clear. It's like an option in stocks, right? You have the ability to, but not the obligation to complete those qualifications as you're around your supplier registration.
Okay. You could, but you don't have to. Right. I think though from what you said before, I feel like this is one of the key points of the whole thing, because what you explained with missile creation or bridge design, it's basically I need certain qualifications to bid on certain projects. So that's probably one of the key things that I need, right? So you can't have it as an option that they complete the qualifications or not. You need them to have the qualifications in your system to be able to select them for your sourcing, right?
Yes. In Oracle Cloud, no application is sophisticated enough to do a process automatically called flow down. So the government, FEMA, DoD, let's stay with the missile. DoD releases the contract, then the PeopleSoft installation customer client is the one who bids on it. Sell side contract, buy side contract. And then there's a process called flow down, where I have to make sure that the DoD contract says you need qualification 212, and I am going to hire a prime who has either through subs or him or herself 212, and I manage that flow down. That's coming. I would imagine you're going to see that, because I see some things in agreements around projects and other things, but they're starting to set that up. So by actually deploying it this way, you're most likely getting a jump on where Oracle's going to be in the future.
Okay, interesting point. Yeah, I mean, they're still developing and adding to the functionality, right?
We're in an early days, 100%.
Right. I think we had step 3 was what again? Help me.
Performance review. You don't like that one. It's twice.
Performance review.
Very important.
Right. So can you do that in Oracle, the performance review?
You can. It's actually a qualification as well. So now, again, the qualification is where the licensee of Oracle is going to evaluate the supplier, which is the prime, and or what is really the subconsultants, because we don't see it as any different. We have to qualify the sub, but our relationship, our contract, everything is with the prime. And so what this does is it allows you to use, again, supplier qualifications, and you do what's called an internal questionnaire, where you would solicit the buyer who contracted with the prime, and you would ask them, how is this to work? How is the supplier to work with? Were they on time? Did they resolve issues? Whatever your internal criteria, completely flexible. But that's the third component in the sub-consulting process, is the performance review, and that's the dynamic of who's being asked. And so you would just set up the qualifications, you would use the initiative, you would send it to the internal responder, which is the buyer. They would respond back. And then oftentimes you have a department called compliance. They're the ones who receive the qualifications, they review them, and they either accept or ask for more detail, and we're good to go.
Nice. So till now, everything in Oracle. Let's move to the next step.
Sure.
Is that also possible in Oracle or not?
Well, that's easy, right? So the next step is what we'll call the history. And so it's the ability to have a 360 point of view. So I want to be able to see both the qualifications and all the tasks, money related to the supplier. And at the same time, I want to be able to see the reviews that we did internally for that supplier. And I want to see them all in one, I don't say application, but report, or one place, let's say, one page. So yes, obviously, because that data is in Oracle Cloud, you can do that.
That is a good point. I would add on one small thing, because we had Marilyse in the last episode of Ask the Expert, Marilyse Steenkamp, in reporting.
The queen of OTBI, as I like to call her.
Queen of OTBI. The research supplier function that comes delivered in Oracle Cloud could be a little bit improved, especially when you want to search your qualifications on, in the relationship between your subconsultants and prime suppliers. So that is probably, if you guys listening and thinking, maybe you need some visibility into that, then maybe go check out the last episode, because there we talked a little bit more about reporting and OTBI and how to consolidate your data inside of Oracle Cloud, right?
Yeah, and this is one, sorry to cut, this is one of those areas where, so when you're different than on-prem, when you move into cloud, your OTBI reporting engine is in line with your Oracle Cloud role-based security. So this is a really good point, because this is also at the point where the research supplier function is related to buyers. So I'll say this slowly, and for my folks that are government or quasi-government, architectural engineer, construction, whatever, they'll understand this. Oftentimes the requester who initiated the rec is the PM on the job. And so they're not a buyer. There's thousands of them. They're pretty much every PM for something that we're doing. And so really clear, a lot of times there's this whole other thing that we may push out to Power BI because we can then control the data security, because we obviously want our requester not to have to come back to compliance or the buying department, so that they would have to ask, oh, okay, how can you tell me who I can do this job? Who's going to be ordnance in Ohio for doing explosives as part of a missile? That's a crazy way to do it. So you are correct that sometimes we've had to carve out something in Power BI or there's a couple different ways that you can do it, but you can produce a static listing and you could assign it to an info item inside procurement. There's endless ways to do it, but you are correct in that you need to be able to search through all the suppliers with that qualification and all of the qualifications for that supplier.
Right. And again, I think the topic that you just mentioned, we talked about it last week too. OTBI specific roles, normal roles, licensing. So again, if you guys are interested, then check out that episode. For us now, let's move on to number 5, because I think now we're getting off Oracle Cloud. Is that correct?
You're correct. We're talking about sub-consultant training. Qualifications can come from 2 different places. I would almost call them internal or external. And what I mean by that is if you have a qualification that's called bridge design or PMBOK or PMP or ISO something or another, this is an outside organization. If it's done by the government and it's part of a regulatory training, this is produced by the government. And so that training might be at a different location. But you would go
first,
to that location.
hang on. You just said qualifications before. We're talking training, right?
We are talking training, but the training that you're taking usually gets you a certification. Sorry, maybe I should have said certification.
Okay.
The certification is usually what's specifically asked for as a qualification. Right?
Okay.
If I'm going to take, let's say, PMP, and the PMP has a certification date, begin date, end date, that you marry up with your qualifications, and the compliance team we talked about earlier is using a specific dedicated page in cloud to manage those qualifications as they expire. When I said step 2, I said it's the solicitation of those qualifications, but also the management. So the expiration is what I meant when we talk about management. So anyway, the training that you have is either, if I'm the customer of Oracle Cloud, I have training that I produce myself that I want my subconsultants to take. It might be on how I do time or invoice or what my policies and procedures are, as well as the whole universe that occurs externally, whether it's regulatory or PMP or however.
Okay, so when you say it's 2 different things, I think we're talking mainly about let me call it internal training, right? Where I show you my specific business processes and how we handle stuff. You said we don't use Oracle for that, but you also said I don't have to spend money on a second software. So
sure.
How can you do that then?
I'll tell you what my clients are doing. They're using Panameer because as you know, Panameer is a solution where experts create courses and then they expose those courses to whomever they'd like. So if you're looking at the enterprise version of Panameer, you can create courses as whomever you are, and you can, with approval, load those courses up to Panameer, and then you can expose those courses to whomever you want to take those courses, and then they would get certification. They can put that certification, the same as that we certify anybody on Panameer to take a course. They could download that certification and then upload that certification as part of the step 2, where I'm asking and soliciting that qualification detail from them in Oracle.
Yeah.
Right? So Panameer to do the courses and to get the certification, and then you're right back in the track to go up to Oracle Cloud to load it as the certification as per the request in the qualification.
Yeah. I think that's key. And then the last step was also using Panameer right? Where you said looking for a database to search for different subconsultants.
Right. This is the marketplace idea. And this really came from a particular customer or a vendor called Cognibox. And Cognibox has a great solution, a bit pricey, and that became problematic. And so one of the things that customers wanted when they had used that product is they just wanted the ability. So let's go with our ordinance guy in Ohio. So I don't know or have a sub-consultant with this one kind of expertise. I'd like to know, where do I go to get on, log in, and take a look at the different subs across the country and across the different expertise that I can look to hopefully find somebody, whether it's adding depth as a bidder or we just can't find somebody to do that. And so that's what you would use the Panameer marketplace and search for that talent.
Okay, awesome. So let me recap that. Subconsultants are, or you want to store subconsultant information because you need this information to make sourcing decisions for your prime suppliers, because they are using their subconsultants' qualifications. You cannot do everything in Oracle, but you can do a lot. By using the supplier module, you're using the supplier qualification module, and then you have an integration, or you're using a training platform to provide external training and certifications for free and upload them back into Oracle, where they then can get stored as qualifications.
And then, of
accepted. Course,
correct, right.
Awesome. And then you also need the supplier research functionality, maybe expand that a little bit from what Oracle already has. Right, so you may need a little bit of a analysis, query, report, whatever you want to call it, and the rest you can pretty much do with Oracle. Sounds better to me than using spreadsheets, to be honest.
Yes, well, much better than using spreadsheets, but almost as important. A spreadsheet can get lost, and I cannot. I have really limited ability and visibility to report because those elements are not inside Oracle Cloud, and they're not
especially with Microsoft.
Yeah, so unless you take that data and dump it out in a common delimited, and, again, there's a world of things you can do, but do you really want to do that? And right. But you want that visibility, and increasingly compliance is seeing that, right? And so yes. I think it's just it's a smarter solution, right? There was a couple things that we had to find a home for, particularly 5 and 6, but you are correct, and there's and we're not going through the depth. We don't have that kind of time, but there you hit on the high points of where you're going from onboarding to qualification. They're out, you're taking some courses, coming back, getting qualified, and you find them to go through that process. I think the only thing we didn't talk about, we talked about it, but is at the end of that process, once you're in Oracle with these qualifications, spreadsheet is not telling you which qualifications are expiring. It's not going to tell you that. Right?
That's a good point.
Tell you that. It will
very good point.
Those qualification expirations, right? And so you can manage that. So it's in that sense, it's much better, and it's cheaper, and it's saving people money, right? So you have no pay-to-play concern if you're in the government.
Right. That's a big one too. Good. No, I think that's super interesting. Very interesting insight, because I think there's a lot of people out there struggling with that whole idea, feeling like they bought an incomprehensive solution. And I mean, that thought is fast to come, right? When you get it first and you don't see a field where it says subconsultants. So this insight was super helpful. I still, even though you explained it very well, don't get me wrong, I think there is a big complexity to the whole thing, right? So if somebody is listening and they just want to understand which of these 6 things do I actually need for my personal project, right? Is there any way they can get in contact with you?
Absolutely. They can go find my TidyCal out on Panameer.
Right.
Easiest way to get a hold of me. And TidyCal will drop you into it's a scheduling tool, so it drops you into my current schedule. I usually block some time out, so it's usually pretty reasonable time to be able to get a hold of me. Oftentimes that's not the big discussion, but it's either a quick question or it's a chance to say, hey, I think I want to do this, right? and then we can map it out from there. Very easy. Yes.
Right. I think you call it a strategy call. Let me make it easy. People don't have to find it. I will just drop the link to it in the description if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. So people can just click on it and schedule a meeting with you right away. So yeah, everybody, thank you for listening the whole way through. And again, if you actually want to see results, decrease your spend, as Scott said before, and just have a way more streamlined way of managing your supplier data, subconsultants, and evaluating their performance, then definitely reach out to Scott and just schedule a quick call. For you, Scott, thank you for joining us today. It was really super helpful. And I hope to have you back soon with another topic.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I think the podcast idea is great. I'm super excited for clients to be able to get exposed to different solutions. And I'm also really happy that the guys and girls that are creating really either creative or just really solid solutions now have a vehicle to be able to talk about. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I think we will come up with a new topic pretty soon. Hope to have you back soon. Guys, if you listen to the end, just make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next episode of Ask the Expert.